Welcome back to Even Tacos Fall Apart, the podcast that's all about nurturing our mental health and well-being. I'm MommaFoxFire, and today I have a truly enlightening episode in store for you. We are diving deep into a fascinating topic that impacts each and every one of us, whether we realize it or not. It's a subject that can shape the way we experience the world, our relationships, and our overall happiness. We're going to be talking about emotional debt versus emotional wealth and dissolving waffles, or worries, anxiety, fear, frustration, lethargy, exhaustion, and stress, with the incredible Dr. Katie Nall. Katie is a renowned expert in the field of emotional well-being and a practitioner of various therapeutic techniques, including tapping and meditation. In this episode, we'll explore the concept of emotional debt, what it means, and how it can affect us. We'll uncover the transformative power of techniques like tapping and meditation. And Dr. Nall will share practical steps you can take to enhance your own emotional wealth. So whether you've been dealing with emotional challenges, want to strengthen your mental health, or simply want to learn more about this fascinating topic, you're in for a treat. Get ready to dissolve your own waffles and embark on a journey towards emotional abundance. Stay tuned as we jump into this eye-opening conversation with Dr. Nall. Don't forget to connect with our community via Twitter, Discord, Twitch, and the Tacos Fall Apart website. Your emotional well-being matters, and we are here to support you every step of the way. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Mental Health Monday. I am really excited to have you here, to have our guest here, to have everything here tonight on this beautiful, beautiful Monday, June 12th. So we are going to be talking about something really cool today, and that is building emotional wealth and avoiding emotional debt and dissolving waffles, which is not a topic title I thought would ever be a thing, but I'm really excited to get into it. Joining me today is Dr. Katie Nall. We are going to be getting into what she wants to talk about in just a little bit. Before we get there, though, for those of you who are here in chat, thank you for being here. I'm going to go ahead and open a question queue. If you have a question for our guest, feel free to type in !, the letter Q, follow it with your question, and then that'll put it into a question queue, and we will make sure that your question gets answered while we are live here. So, Dr. Nall, thank you so much for being here today. I want to go ahead and introduce you with your bio. So not only does Dr. Nall have her PhD in mathematics education, she is also a 2-time TEDx speaker, a professional member of National Speakers Association, a trained DISC, D-I-S-C, personality instructor, and an accredited master trainer and certified practitioner in emotional freedom techniques, or EFT, with additional training in trauma, quantum, and picture EFT. Whether in person or online, Dr. Nall shows others how to dissolve their waffles, which is worry, anxiety, fear, frustration, lethargy, exhaustion, and stress. A careless housekeeper and worse cook with no desire for rehabilitation, she is somehow still married to the same person for over 49 years. That's an accomplishment right there. So I've got some socials if y'all are interested in connecting on the website, via email, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. She's got it all. So make sure that you check her out wherever you would like. So Dr. Nall, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, MommaFoxFire, I'm so excited. I'm just passionate about what you're doing. And I think that's just so fabulous that you're giving so much of your time and effort towards this topic. So thank you.
Absolutely. So we do already have a question in the question queue, and that is from Bite Mark. And she asks, what is your favorite poem?
What is my favorite poem? Oh, that's a very good question. I like Shel Silverstein.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And so the Giving Tree just pops into my mind. I haven't asked that big question recently, and I was actually thinking about getting that book for the oldest 2 of our 5 granddaughters for Christmas, because it's such a Yeah. So that's funny that one just popped in.
Yeah, I love that book. It is so good. It's the messaging of it is just like heartbreaking. I remember reading it when I was a kid, and I didn't fully, comprehend what it was. I was just like, oh, you gotta be nice and save the trees, right? But But now, yeah, I mean, bite mark says it makes me cry. It makes me cry too now reading it. It didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't then.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I like his writing. He's good.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So y'all, I am having a little bit of issues with featured chat, so I might not be able to make the messages pop up like I normally would. But just know if you put it into the question queue, I'll get to it, and it'll be a featured question. Okay, so can you tell us a little bit more about your experience and what made you become interested in specializing in what you do?
Well, MommaFoxFire, as you mentioned earlier, I'm a mathematician.
Mm-hmm.
And so what does mathematics have to do at all with mental health? I am also someone who, in my mid-50s, decided I wanted to accomplish one of my life goals, and that was to earn my PhD. And so I was a mature student going back to school. One of the things that I was researching, though, at the time, I was also an administration at a college. I had a room full of students who wanted to graduate from college, but they had one class that was in their way, one class that they had to finish, that they couldn't get through. They'd taken it more than once, and it was the only thing stopping them from graduating. Can you guess what it was?
Was it something in math?
Math.
Yeah.
It was math. It broke my heart, MommaFoxFire. I was like, math is such a fabulous subject. Of course, when they came in to talk to me, I would always say, oh, fabulous, you saved the best for last. Well, they didn't think that at all. Instead, they were frustrated, they were angry, and it wasn't just passing the class. Passing the class meant they could finish their degree. Finishing their degree would mean that they'd get the job that they wanted. Getting the job they wanted meant it would take them out of the social strata they were in. So there was layers to this. And they would come in and they'd say, I only need one more class. And I'd say, what is it? And they'd say, and they couldn't even say the word.
Aww.
And once they said the word, they would be watering the plants in my office with the sweat coming off their palms, or I watched the color in their face just change. They were so scared of even registering for the class. I was heartbroken. So as I was doing my research for my 399-page dissertation,
oh my God,
I know, I wanted to help these students. So I started doing research on how do you eliminate fear and anxiety about math and test taking. I checked out all the journals. I did all the, there's something called Google Scholar that will allow you to research like papers that have been written. I went to eric.gov. I talked to people. I went everywhere. And you know what I found out, Mama Nothing. There was nothing to help my students. There was all this information about what to do once you were registered in a class, but it didn't help my students who were so terrified they couldn't even get up the nerve to register for the class. So I said, okay, there's got to be something. So I recognized my question as a word problem.
Okay.
And in math, as a word problem, what you do is you extract just what you need. So I changed my question to, how do you eliminate fear and anxiety? That was in 2010. And at that time, I just happened to find Nick Ortner's 10-Day Tapping Summit. I watched all 10 days. I bought the book. I bought the DVD. It was all about using emotional freedom technique. I had no idea what it was. I had no idea what I was doing. But I had a room full of students that were desperate. Now, we all know desperate clients are the best because they will do anything.
Right.
So I would take them in one by one and say, I have no idea this would work. Because you know what? MommaFoxFire, those 10 days that they had this summit, they talked about reducing fear and anxiety about money. They talked about fear and anxiety about relationships. They talked about fear and anxiety about careers. Nobody said anything at all about math or test taking. So I was taking this technique and applying it to students, not having any idea at all if it was going to work or not. I took students in one by one. And I'm like, I don't know if it's going to work. Let's try it. And they're like, anything, just anything. I sat and I waited and I waited and I waited. And after a few weeks, one by one, they started coming back and they go, I'm not really sure, but I think I'm passing my math class. Now, these were students who had failed the class, not once and not twice, some of them 3 times. And it was the only thing keeping them from graduating.
Wow.
So I was like, this stuff is powerful. I don't know what it works, how it works. And I don't even know what I'm doing because I was just practicing on them. And as it turned out, when I decided to go take classes, I did not know what I was doing. And I accidentally put students into a trauma state because I just didn't know, right?
Oh my gosh.
Right? And just to compare, it took me 4 years working full time to earn my PhD in mathematics education. Once I figured out the power and the flexibility of tapping, I said, I've got to train others. I want everyone to know how to do this. So I decided I was going to be a master trainer. It took me 8 years to become a master trainer while I was working full time at the college.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. So I have so many questions just about that. So I guess, all right. So you've got these, all right, listen, I love math. Math is wonderful. My kids love math. They're both in music lessons, and both of their music teachers individually came to me and said, I had to equate it to math for them to get it. But as soon as I did, it clicked with both of them. So like, I love math. However, each of them have struggled in different areas. And so it's like, if you can find something that would help them in that way, I think that that's fantastic. Like that would be awesome. So how did you have this problem, you want to figure out how to solve it. You're doing it for a dissertation, right? You're trying to put everything through this. You're trying to help other people. How did you find tapping? Like, how did you make that connection originally?
So I'm one of those people who doesn't believe in coincidences. And as I was doing my research, again, like I said, I changed my question to how do you eliminate fear and anxiety? Mm-hmm. And when people talk about tapping, they talk about how it can help people reduce anxiety and eliminate stress. And so I have a whole library of books on all kinds of different techniques. I went through things like emotion code. I went through Reiki. I went through all kinds of things to find something that would help others that was easy to teach, super easy to learn, non-addictive, non-invasive, and it could be self-administered. What I found with tapping is that they have done over 40 years of clinical tests, and they found that when we do get our waffles, when we're worried and anxious, fearful, frustrated, lethargic, exhausted, and stressed, our adrenaline and our cortisol levels go up. Mm-hmm. And that's the sympathetic nervous system kicking in, our survival system. And we have to get our parasympathetic nervous system back down. 1 hour of tapping can reduce cortisol levels by 40%.
Wow.
That is nothing to do with drugs. It's no cost. Right. It's nothing. It can make such a difference so quickly and is so powerful that I was like, okay, I'm loving this. And the more research I did, the better it got. And I was like, oh, this is exactly what our students need.
I love that. That's amazing. So all right, one more question about everything that you just talked about. What was it like going back for your doctorate? Because that is something I have considered going back for my master's and then doctorate eventually. But every time I think about it, I'm like, it's so much.
So I was a student that went through and got my bachelor's, and it took me 6 years to get my 4-year degree. I went to a community college for 2 years and forgot to get a degree. So the whole idea was college was just always overwhelming to me. But when I was 18 years old, I made a list of the things I wanted to accomplish by the time I was 25. Mm-hmm. And number one on that list was I was going to earn my PhD by the time I was 25. I had no idea.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I I had no idea what a PhD was. I had no idea what subject it was. The only thing I knew was that the life that I was raised in was not the life I was going to live as I grew up. And I had heard that a PhD was the highest level of education you could get. And I saw, just kind of observation, that education could change my life. And so that's what I was going for. And so 25. Now, I had a list of 5 things that I was going to accomplish by 25. PhD was number 1. Here's reality. By age 25, I was working on my master's in statistics, but I was nowhere close to my PhD. And, but it was something that was like inside me. I wanted it. I wanted it. I wanted it. And so by the time the youngest of our 3 children were 25, I was working at a college where advanced degrees are recognized and honored. And I went to my supervisor. I was in administration and said, hey, I'm thinking about getting my PhD. What do you think? Well, me getting a PhD would be a benefit to him.
Sure.
Right? Because,
yeah.
Okay. And I went to my husband and said, what do you think about me getting a PhD? And he's like, it really doesn't matter what I think. You're going to do it anyway. Did I tell you we've been married a long time? And he said, I'll do whatever needs to be done. So he was very supportive. I ended up, I had some disastrous interviews with different colleges, but I finally ended up at a fabulous, fabulous college nearby. And I was unsure of what I was getting into, to tell you the truth, MommaFoxFire. But I will tell you that all my kids were grown and out of the house, and most of them were off the payroll. That was good.
Excellent.
We were empty nesters. We had a lot of free time. And I also found that starting back to school in my mid-50s, school was so much easier. So much easier.
Just because of like the life knowledge that you had accumulated and everything?
Definitely. But the other thing that I hadn't taken into account is when I was younger and going to school, I was worried about, dating and life and careers. And I had so many unknowns. Now, I still have a lot of unknowns, but I don't worry about them anymore. But, there's so many known things. I know where I'm living. I know what I'm doing.
Absolutely.
I had a lot more stability now. And I also know how I study best. When I was younger, I was trying anything and everything.
That's a great point.
Right? So as it turned out, going to school at 55 was way easier than way back when.
Well, that's good to hear, because if I do decide to ever do that, it'll probably be after my kids are off my payroll. So what is your favorite thing about what you do now, and what are some of the biggest challenges?
So my favorite thing is after working with math students and reducing their fear and anxiety about math, the word kind of spread. I now have clients from all over the world.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And I've been on Zoom for 13 years, working with different people and helping them. So what I love the most about it is that while I'm on Zoom and while we're doing a session, I can watch people's faces change. I can watch people's bodies change as we're doing the tapping session. And I'm just like, every time I do a session with someone, I'm completely blown away by the effect. I'm just astounded. I get so excited. So brief story about how the word waffles came up is that I was so excited about waffles about tapping when I first got into it, that I would almost go up to complete strangers, grab them by the shoulders and say, I know you've got a problem and I can fix it. And that was not a good marketing technique.
Right.
People would say, get away. We don't know what you're doing. And so I changed my technique and then I go up to people and say, oh, I need to talk to you about emotional freedom technique, EFT. It's just fabulous. And people are like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So I said, I had to stop that. So I stopped and thought, what problem do I help people with? And they're worried, they're anxious, they're fearful. And I started going it together, and I love playing with words. And I thought, oh, it smells waffles. I can smell waffles. And I have helped clients in every one of those situations. Now, what is the biggest challenge? The biggest challenge is when people, especially when my clients attend the 8-hour training, because now that I'm a trainer, I can train people in level 1, which is just introductory for tapping on yourself, your family, and your friends. And you have to have that to go to level 2, which is part of the process of being certified. And then also level 3, which is advanced techniques. So part of my problem is once people go through level 1 or level 2, and they work, and even clients that just come to me for individual sessions, it is so effective that people don't come back.
It's a good problem.
I've had clients that have been seeing therapists for years. And after 6 months of once a month, a 1-hour tapping session, they're fine. Their therapist releases them. Yeah. So my biggest problem is my clients get well, and I'm always on the lookout for another client.
Got to find more, just more and more and more. Absolutely.
And I'm not concerned with that as much as I want to train people. I want people to understand how to do this, and also understand, just like a rose or a knife that are useful, beautiful, but in the wrong hands, it can be dangerous. And I casually mentioned that I accidentally would put people in a trauma state because I didn't know what I was doing. And so the training is important. And I've had more than one training session where I'm working with a group of people and I ask for a volunteer. And even in the training session, the volunteer goes into a trauma state. And so you have to know how to recognize that and how to help the person come back out of it. What I love, because I was in counseling once a week for 4 years. And at the end of the session, my therapist, who I loved, would say, okay, Katie, it's been an hour. We're going to have to wrap it up and get out now. And I would be in the corner just sobbing and hysterical and all that ugly stuff. And I go, okay. And I'd kind of pull myself together and stumble out the door and get to my car and think, oh, I've got to get back to work. And I'd be an emotional mess, right? That doesn't happen with tapping. By the end of the tapping session, you have issues resolved and you go back and you are emotionally together. You're back together, and you are making progress in kind of peeling back the onion, right? Because we all have onions of emotional issues. Yes. And but you peeled a layer back and you're feeling like, oh, okay, I can do this. This is good. This is great.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I love the idea that, like, beyond just normal talk therapy, like, there are things where you can go into it, and then by the time you're done with one session, it's like, instead of being in this heightened state of emotion, you've at minimum with EFT and tapping, we've talked about EFT and tapping before, and it's just like, you get to this point where at the end of a session, you're feeling more calm, you're feeling more centered, and you're right, because you get to the end of a session of CBT or talk therapy, and you're like, face is all red and puffy, and yeah, so that's great.
Clinical studies have shown that EFT is as effective as EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprogramming, both of which are way more effective than CBT. The difference is with EMDR, you have to be physically sitting in front of a therapist. And with EFT, you can do it over Zoom with a mathematician. You don't need to have, and you learn to do it yourself. And that's the part. I love empowering people. I love that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
On your website, you have a line about your life mission being education at every turn. So I love that, because, like I said, I've thought about going back for different degrees and stuff. I haven't, mostly because of money. But so what have you been learning and what have you been teaching lately?
So, first of all, I'll explain my mission statement a little bit more. I was working at one point as an administrator at a church, and this was probably 30 years ago. And that's when mission statements and vision statements were really coming into vogue. And our job was to come up with our own individual mission statement. And I really struggled with that. I wasn't quite sure. And then I realized that my entire life, I've really been had a focus on some area of education. But I also realized many times I'm the student and often I'm the teacher. So at every turn reflects that regardless of what happens, good, bad, however anyone perceives it, there's something to be learned or something to be taught. And that's the every turn. Yeah, thank you. So what I've been doing most recently during the pandemic, I had the opportunity to not only continue taking Qigong classes. Qigong is an 8,000-year-old exercise program, and there's a Qigong expert here in town. So I was taking those classes for a while, but he had encouraged me to take the certification to become an instructor. I was like, oh, yeah, sure, that sounds good. I collect certificates like people collect Kleenexes. And so a couple of years ago, after I got my certification, then people started asking me to teach. So I have taught Qigong at elementary schools. I'm currently teaching Qigong at a nursing home. And I teach at the Museum of Art and at a couple of different fitness centers. The nice thing about that is that, again, it's the same kind of thing. By the time people are finished with their Qigong classes, they leave feeling relaxed, refreshed, and joyful. Along those lines of teaching Qigong, I'm excited that I'm soon going to be attending a healing Qigong class. I kind of view education as like plant life, like botany. If you look at a plant, it's either growing or dying. And so if I'm not growing, guess what? I'm dying. So I'm always looking for a class. In fact, I was talking to a friend the other day, and she was like, I said, I really want to go to an improv class. There's not one in my town. I have to drive probably 45 minutes to the closest one. And she said, I just signed up for one. It's an hour away. You need to go to yours too. So I'm getting that little dig to go in another direction too.
Absolutely. That's really cool. I love that you got so many things going on. That's really, I feel like, you sound like you're constantly just in motion, and that's very on purpose, which is great.
MommaFoxFire, I'll tell you, it's one of my husband's requirements. He feels like if I stay busy, I will not be on his case. So every time I say, can I, his answer is always yes. Just go, do what you need to do.
Absolutely. So this next question is, it seems a little off topic, but it is an audience favorite. And that is, do you have a serial killer or true crime story that fascinates you?
I do have a true crime story, and it involves me. So there's going to be a lot of background on this.
Sure.
So
yeah.
Okay. My mother and father divorced before I was born. I met my father when I was 14 years old. When I was 17 years old, I left home and lived in a foster home. We moved a lot when I was growing up. I went to 12 different schools in 5 different states. After the foster home, I graduated from high school, and my father, at the time, I was living in Nebraska. My father was living in California. And my father said, I will pay for you to go to college. Well, remember, education was like, that's it for me. I'm like, you'll pay? That's great. And you had said, you'd go to college if somebody was paying, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm like, that's great. So he flew me from Nebraska out to San Diego. And I thought, for the first time in my life, I'm going to be cool. Because I had moved to so many different schools and so long, I was always the new kid. And because we moved so much, the only subject I was conversant in was math, because regardless of what school we went to, the math was consistent. Everything else was up in the air. So I was always a math nerd, or, the new kid. So I'm going to be cool. I thought I was going to be living with my dad, which I think about it now. He was 42 years old. There's this 18-year-old kid from Nebraska. He's living by himself in a studio apartment. There's no way, right, that he's going to have me living with him. So he drives me out of San Diego to a small town north of there, in a little town called Poway. And I thought, he used to live here with his second wife. And as we walked in the door, I was so surprised that he was dropping me off at his ex-wife's house. Now, here's where the crime comes in, or the potential crime, is that the reason why I was so surprised he dropped me off there is because my stepmother had just been released from being held in jail for more than a year. The accusation was that she'd hired a hitman to kill my father, and I was going to go to live with her. Now, what's interesting is that the jury was a hung jury, and nobody could make a decision. And so that's my true crime story.
Wow. So, man. So I'm assuming your father did not get murdered after that.
From what I've heard and what I understand is she hired one guy who hired another guy, and the last guy in the line that they hired turned out to be an undercover cop.
Good.
Yeah, right? Right. Yeah, that whole situation was pretty bizarre. I walked into this house and met my half-brother and half-sister who did not know I existed until I walked into the house.
Oops.
Yeah.
Well, that's exciting. Man.
Yeah, the whole thing was exciting. And of course, my father had said he would pay for my college. And I was like excited. And so this small town, Poway, I'm looking around. I said, and we'd lived in small towns all through the Midwest. I'm like, where's the college? I don't see a college here. Oh, it's up the road in Escondido. And I don't know how much you know about Southern California. Anything is up the road. Anything is not in that block, you have to drive to.
Yeah.
They don't have public transit. There's not sidewalks. You just have to drive.
So does here too.
Oh, great. Where's my car? And they said, there's no car. So, but remember, education was the most important thing to me, right? He's going to pay for my college. I'm an 18-year-old out of Nebraska, so I hitchhiked 20 miles one way.
Oh my gosh.
20 miles the other way. Half the time it was the highway patrol picking me up saying, what are you doing? And I'm standing there with all my books. I'm like, I'm going to college. And the other half the time I'm in the back of a van saying, this probably wasn't my best choice.
Yeah, I mean, I guess back then hitchhiking was
a little more common.
Yeah, a little more. I was going to say a little safer, but it probably wasn't. I mean, not any more safe, just more common. Yeah.
A little more common.
I'm glad you survived that for sure.
Yeah. It's all good.
Yep, absolutely. I want to get back to talking about waffles because I love the term. I love how you came up with the term. I think that that's really cool. And I hope that it continues to bring you success. So what are some of the techniques that you use with clients to dissolve those waffles? You've talked about tapping. Are there any others that you use?
Oh, yeah. I've got a whole bunch of things up my sleeve. There is a process called havening. I don't know. Have you heard of that?
I have not.
Okay. It's a great way. Like if somebody is having trouble calming down, there are some very easy havening techniques that can be done. One of my favorites, I'll share one of my favorites, which is to take your hands together and just rub them up and down as you go from side to side.
Oh, that's cool. That's really soothing. I like that.
Isn't it soothing? It's really, really nice. I also have for when we're doing Zoom, if somebody is telling me that one of their issues, I had a client that one of the issues was they were really having a hard time concentrating during Zoom. Because it's like it can be so boring. And during the pandemic, everything was on Zoom, right?
Yep.
So I did some research and I found something I call binary feet. So if you think of my hands like your feet and you put your feet flat on the ground, and you take one toe going up and one toe going down, the heel going up, and then you slowly go back and forth, moving your feet. What you're doing is you're giving your body the sensation of fleeing. And we know that, yes, we know that, when the sympathetic nervous system comes up, we want to fight, flee, fight, freeze, or fawn. And so this gives you the sensation of fleeing, and you can be doing it and nobody would even know you're doing it. And it's a way to relax. It can also be used at the dinner table if there's uncomfortable conversations.
Ooh, I like that.
There's also another experience that I really love. It's called humming, breath humming. So we can do that if you like. Sure. You take a deep breath in through your nose and then hum it out.
That's cool.
And of course, I have Qigong, so I have a lot of Qigong exercises that we can do. A really good exercise. I know it's nighttime in a lot of places. For those who are listening, if they want to have a great technique to help them go to sleep at night, if they take their hand and palm up, and take the other hand on their heart, and as they go down, just rubbing down the inside the arm, and then flipping it over and rubbing on the outside. And then when you go on the inside, you go, ah, and then flip it over, inhale, and then, ah.
That's
and do it on both sides. Do it 16 times on both arms. Let me know, but I bet you'll have a little bit easier time getting to sleep at night.
Well, I'm going to have to try that one for sure because I always have a hard time falling asleep. I'm a bedtime reader, so I get in bed and I read, and essentially I read myself to sleep because I read until my eyes just will not stay open anymore. And that's when I know that I'm not going to try to close my eyes and have my brain racing. Well, that's my indicator.
Try this 16
I'll
times.
Have to try that.
Yeah. It's actually a Qigong it helps calm down your heart and your lung. Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah.
It would work for you because he uses both hands. You can't read without your hands. You underestimate my dedication to reading.
What are you reading now?
Right now I'm reading the third book in the Malediction series. Malediction. I can't remember hold on, I can look it up on Goodreads real quick because it's actually, I didn't realize this when I started it, but it's a YA series. It's a fantasy series. Danielle L. Jensen is who wrote that, and it's an interesting series. I don't know that I would super recommend it, but it's not bad.
You'll get to sleep at night.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think that it's one that I would really recommend. One that I did read just recently that I highly recommend is a book called This Is How It Always Is. I think everyone should read that book, whether you...
Who wrote that?
Hold on, I can look that one up too. Hold on.
I'm writing it down.
Yeah. So that one is by Lori Frankel. And it's about a family who, and I won't give too much away, but they're dealing with kind of the ups and downs and ins and outs of raising a child who is trans. And the questions that come up within the family and outside of the family and all of it. As everybody here knows, I have a child who's trans, and reading that book, there were plenty of things that I was like, well, it wasn't like that for us, but there were plenty of things that I was like, oh, yeah, that's exactly how it was. So I highly recommend that one. I just happen to be in the middle of a series that I don't super recommend. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's like a 3 out of 5 stars, Not bad, but
as a sleep aid, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I read a really good fiction book the other day called Killers of a Certain Age. Now I'm much older than you.
I've heard of that one.
It was really good. It was good. It was about 4 women who were paid assassins who had retired. And I won't say anything more, but it was
Yes.
it was really good. And I got a lot of techniques on how to kill people. So,
Hey.
that's always handy.
Yes, I'm putting that one on my want to read list on Goodreads right now because I have heard of that one. You're not the first one to bring it up. So
Yeah, it was good.
now I'll have to. Plus, I just was listening to something and they were talking about middle-aged women and how invisible you can be. And it's just like no one pays attention to you if you're a middle-aged, especially a middle-aged white woman. No one pays any attention.
This is true, including my children. And definitely my husband.
Yeah.
Now, I will highly recommend another book. It's an older book, but I'm rereading it. I'm really enjoying it. It's called The Happiness Advantage. The gentleman who wrote it is really good storyteller. So that's one thing. He's a great storyteller. But he brings in a lot of scientific evidence about the power of happiness. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Is it Sean Acor?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Highly recommend it.
It's already on my want to read list.
Okay. Put it up to the top.
It's already there. Yeah.
It's easy to read book. It sounds like it'll be something. And let's see. Have you ever heard of Made to Stick by the Heath Brothers?
No.
Anything by the Heath Brothers are great. Heath. It's 2 brothers who write, and again, they have great stories. It's great stories on it, but then they also bring in a lot of scientific evidence, and I love
that.
Yeah,
that's great. So I put the links, all of those books that we just mentioned, including the one that I'm currently reading that I don't super recommend, just in case anyone wants to read a fantasy YA. It is easy to read. It's just not the best. I'm not even sure how it got onto my Kindle. If I'm being honest, I don't know how it showed up there. And I started reading it because I finished one book on the plane that I wasn't expecting to finish. And then all of a sudden I was like, well, I'm done with that book. Now what? And I'm on a plane, so I can't I can't go browse the shop. And it just happened to already be on my Kindle. So I started reading it. Who knows how it got there? Maybe I put it there. I don't know. Maybe Kindle just put it there. That's fine. Oh, Kitty, you're fine. So we've talked a little bit about tapping and emotional freedom techniques, and I know we've done a whole podcast just on EFT, but for those who maybe weren't here for that or those who haven't listened to that yet, can you explain what EFT and tapping are?
Sure. So emotional freedom technique was developed by a Stanford-educated electrical engineer by the name of Gary Craig. He looked at what traditional Chinese medicine calls meridians or energy pathways and saw them as electrical circuits. And he said, look, if first of all, there's many different versions of tapping, but the basic version is tapping on 8 points throughout your body. One of them is the top of your head. The other one is above your nose on the edge of your eyebrow. One is your temple. Another is under your eye. One is under your nose. The other one's under your lips. There's 2 of them on your collarbone and then on your ribs. And he said, if you tap on those 8 places, you're going to hit most of the meridians. Now, why is that important? The traditional Chinese medicine believes that when we are feeling stagnant, when we have a emotion stuck in us that we choose not to keep, that it's physically stuck in our meridians. And the belief is that tapping on these different spots is going to unblock that stuck stagnant emotion and allow the energy to flow freely. There has been a professor from Auburn University who has found only recently, just in the last few years, that there are invisible lines throughout our body that mirror the meridians that are invisible until you tap on them and then they turn yellow. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So even though we can't completely understand and explain why tapping works, we know it works. Clinical studies have shown that just tapping on those 8 points by themselves can relieve waffles to a certain point. When you add, surprisingly, negative emotions that you say out loud to it, it's exponentially more effective than just the physical manner of it. Would you like to try it?
Sure, I would love to.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a number of questions, and we'll just give the very basic examples so that people can understand what we're doing. But MommaFoxFire, I would ask you in the last 24 to 48 hours, what is a very small thing that has caused you waffles, worry, anxiety, fear, frustration, lethargy, exhaustion, or stress?
So I'll call it a small thing, but this has actually come up a couple of times in the past 24 hours, but it's making the podcast profitable.
Okay. And when you think about, and I'm going to take notes. The only reason I take notes is because I have to use your words. And
Okay.
so I don't jump to any conclusions. So making the podcast profitable. And when you think about making the podcast profitable, what emotion comes up? What negative emotion comes up?
I would probably say worry. It's
Worry.
just worry that it'll never happen. Yeah.
Sure. And when was the last time that you worried that making the podcast profitable would never happen? When was that?
I would say earlier today.
Okay. And where were you earlier today when you thought that making the podcast profitable would never happen?
Sitting at my computer.
Okay. And from the top of your head to the bottom of your toes, where do you feel that worry in your body right now at this moment?
Right now in this moment, I would say it's probably like lower back, really.
Okay. Very common.
That's where I manifest a lot of stress.
Okay. Yeah, that's very common. And 0 to 10, where 0 is like, oh, no big deal. It's gonna stand on its own soon. And 10 is the most worried you've been in your entire life. What number would you give the worry right now?
Oh, I'd probably put it at like a 4 or 5. Call it a 5.
Okay, good. And is this a true statement? Right here, right now, I feel safe.
Yes.
Okay. For those in the listening audience, if that's not a true statement, here are some alternatives you can use when we say it. Right here, right now, someday I hope to feel safe. Or right here, right now, I accept the emotions. The whole idea is when we're doing tapping, everything we say, I'm going to ask you to say some words, and everything we say has got to be true for you.
Okay.
So if I ask you to repeat something, you go, it's not what I said, or no, I don't believe that. Then will you repeat it in your own words for me?
Sure.
Okay. So what we're going to do is take your hand and look at your palm of one hand.
Okay.
And on the side of that hand, between your little finger and your wrist, we're going to take 4 fingers of the other hand and tap right there on the side of the hand. And I'd ask you to repeat after me and say, even though earlier today I was sitting at my computer.
Earlier today, I was sitting at my computer.
And I was wondering how I was going to make this podcast profitable.
And
right now, I worry that it's never going to happen. I feel that worry in my lower back. Right here, right now, I feel safe. Even though I have some worry in my lower back. Just remembering that earlier today, I was sitting at the computer. Wondering if I was ever going to make this podcast profitable. Right here, right now, I feel safe anyway. Last time, even though, I really worry. That it's never going to happen. That I'm never going to make this podcast profitable. I was just thinking that earlier today, sitting at the computer. And right now, I feel it in my lower back.
And right now I feel it in my lower back.
Right here, right now, I feel safe.
Right here, right now, I feel safe.
And then tapping on the center of your head and the top of your head. And you can use one hand or both hands or both. It doesn't matter. And say, oh, this worry in my lower back.
This worry in my lower back.
And above your nose, on the edge of your eyebrow, this worry on my lower back.
This worry in my lower back.
On the side of your eye, on the temple, this worry in my lower back.
This worry in my lower back.
Under your eye, this worry in my lower back.
This worry in my lower back.
Under your nose, this worry in my lower back.
This worry in my lower back.
Under your lips, this worry in my lower back.
This worry in my lower back.
On your collarbones, this worry in my lower back.
This worry in my lower back.
And on your ribs, this worry in my lower back.
This worry in my lower back.
Put your hands on your opposite shoulders. We're going to take our hands all the way down to our elbows as we breathe out like a cartoon character. It goes like this. You did that well. So, and if you have some water nearby, it'd be good to take a drink of water.
I do.
So, MommaFoxFire, thinking about earlier today and making your podcast profitable, the worry from 0 to 10, where is it right now?
Wow, I think I put it down to like a 2.
Oh, if it's a 2, let's do this another tapping technique. Put both feet flat on the floor.
Okay.
Keep your head straight.
Okay.
I want you to think about worrying about making podcasts profitable. Don't move your head. Take your eyes all the way down so your eyes are looking at the floor. Slowly move your eyes up to knee height, up to your waist, up to your chest, looking straight ahead. Your eyes are going to go above your eyebrow, all the way up to the ceiling, thinking about the worry. Now slowly coming down, 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 until you get down to the floor, and then shake it off. What is your worry now between 0 and 10?
I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't feel like it's necessarily there anymore.
It's because it's not.
That's
now, what's
really cool
is that clinical studies have shown that that worry will not return. And when the worry's gone, what happens is you can start thinking more clearly. Because when the worry's there, it occupies so much space, if you want, and it's taking over our prefrontal cortex, which is thinking, and really deriding all of our systems. So once you can eliminate your waffles, you can think clearer, you can be more focused. I had one client who was a high school student who had taken the SAT, the Scholastic Aptitude Test, which is a test that high school juniors and seniors take, that some of them use as possible admissions for college. She had done very, very well and was certainly within the range that she would be accepted in all of her schools that she wanted to apply. But she knew she could do better, and she wanted to retake it and increase her scores for scholarships. So she signed up, registered for a second time, studied every day, studied hard, took the test, got the scores back. Her scores were lower than they were the first time.
Oh,
That
no.
ticked her off.
Yeah.
So she said, I know I can do this. She registered for a third time, paid for it, and then got busy, because high school students get busy. It was the Sunday before the next or third SAT was going to start on a Saturday. And she said, oh my gosh, I forgot to study. What am I going to do? Now, her mother knew me and hired me. We worked for 1 hour on Monday, 1 hour on Wednesday, 1 hour on Friday. She took the SAT for the third time. The third time she took her SAT exams, her score went up 90 points up from the first time. That is a significant increase.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty amazing what can be done with tapping.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love that. I mean, it's one of those things that you don't think that going into something, if you're worried about something, that just like tapping on certain points on your body can really do anything, but it really can. It's really neat. And there's science behind it, which I think is the coolest part, is that there's science behind all of this. had to put my headphones back in the right spot because.
Oh yeah, because we've been moving things.
Is there ever a time where these methods would not be recommended for someone?
Yes. Tapping, like I said, can be used positively or negatively. For instance, if you're in a crisis situation, I'll just think maybe you're getting held up or something. You don't want to say, stop, I need to tap because I can't deal with it.
Right.
Yeah. So and if you have a very, what they call a capital T trauma, something really big, I'll give you an example. I had one student I was working with, again, needed one class left to finish. It was math. And came into my office and I'm like, oh, you're in the right place. We'll do some tapping. I said, so what is it you don't like about math? And he grumbled a little bit. And he said, well, I can't take the test. I said, why can't you take the test? And he said, it's too noisy in the testing center. I said, well, that's strange because they have earplugs that you can get so that it'll take out the noise. He said, no, it's the fluorescent lights. I said, the fluorescent lights are too noisy? And I don't know why I came to think of it, but I said, what do they remind you of? And what he said was, it reminds me of the sound I heard right before I passed out from my mother strangling me.
Wow.
You don't want to tap.
Yeah.
And there were so many times, especially before I was trained, where I'd be like, okay, I'm going to help you. Tapping's going to help everything. And we're going to get going on math. And so tell me about what happened. What do you think about math? Well, I was pretty good at math until college. I'm like, okay, I've heard that before. So what happened? Well, I just got finished with my math test. I'm like, I know what this is going to say because everybody says after the math test, I questioned all my, and I knew I was not expecting him to say. And I went back up to my dorm room, and my roommate had committed suicide in the dorm room.
Oh man!
So it had nothing to do with math. It had that association that the amygdala had said after math. Somebody died. So yeah, there are definitely times. It's so much better to be trained, and the training is only 8 hours, but it can make a huge difference. Huge difference.
Absolutely. Are there any self-exercises that you feel like everyone would benefit from doing? So considering that not everyone is trained, and whether they're struggling with waffles in the moment or not, just general exercises you think everybody could benefit from?
So yeah, I have a lot of suggestions for that. I'm really big about nutrition and rest. It would be a very good idea for people to get 7 to 8 hours of rest each night and complete and total rest. And when people are filled with waffles, that is very, very challenging. Nutrition is really big. I was very, very sick for 6 years. They were going to do bone marrow transplants on me. And when I was finally diagnosed, and they said, and this was back before everybody knew this term, and they said, oh, you're celiac. And I was like, oh, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. And they said, well, you can't eat gluten. And I said, well, what's gluten? I mean, I didn't have any idea. And so I'd been sick for 6 years. I'd gone through a parade of physicians, and I changed my diet in 1 week. I was better. 1 week.
Wow.
I understand the value that diet has on our body, and that our body and our minds are definitely connected by things other than our neck. And that nutrition and rest are really important, in addition to learning how to control our own emotions. I cannot overemphasize enough the importance of laughter and joy and happiness. As the author says in The Happiness Advantage, so many of us say, I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I finish this class, when I pass this test, when I graduate, when I get the right job, when I get married, when I get the right house. I'll be happy when I can leave. I'll be happy when. And all the studies show that the exact opposite is true.
Mm-hmm.
That if you're happy first, that stuff comes along. So I'm a big believer in happiness.
Yeah. I laugh a lot. That's one of the things that I do. Like, I laugh with my kids. We tell stupid jokes to each other. It's always a lot of fun. So I really think that laughing is helpful and something that if you haven't laughed in a while, look up some funny cat videos on YouTube.
Well, MommaFoxFire, that children laugh 200 to 300 times a day. And you can watch the videos. You can show them a pencil and they're just,
Mm-hmm.
it's so crazy. Adults at most laugh 20 to 30 times a day. And we really need to get back into that. I had an awful game that I made the children play at dinner time called the ha-ha game. The first person says ha, the next person has to say ha ha, and then they just have to keep adding the ha's to it, and you just keep going around until ideally
everyone's laughing.
My kids hated that game. I'm not sure, but I think they're teaching their children it too.
Excellent. That's good. Yeah, whenever it's a childhood thing that you were like, I hated this in the moment, and then as a parent, you're like, okay, but it was really good. Oh, that is always excellent.
Yeah.
I want to switch to talking about our emotional bank. So what are some ways to avoid adding emotional debt to our load?
The first part, MommaFoxFire, is recognizing that we are an emotional debt. And it's just like our financial statement. If we say, I'm just going to use my debit card, or, because I still have my card, I still have the checkbook. We used to say that, if I still have checks, I must have money. Right? Doesn't work that way.
Not quite.
And so many of us, especially the women, are helpers. We just want to help and help and help. And what we don't understand is that if we aren't full emotionally, if we haven't had our emotional needs met somehow, and we go to help somebody else, we empty ours.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, when somebody needs help, what we need to do is have so much coming into our emotional help that it's the overflow that's going in to help others. But so many of us don't recognize that we're living in emotional debt. I know for myself, the whole time that the kids were growing up, I would give 150% at work. I mean, I was going to go straight on as going, and I would get home and I'd be spent. I'm like, I'm done. There's nothing left to give. And of course, that was the only time to be with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And to listen. And it's like, I can't listen anymore. I'm done. And I didn't realize how much emotional debt I was living in for most of my kids' lives. So now that I get to be a grandma, or as my kids call me, a goomy, I get the chance. I get the chance to really be there and to listen to my granddaughters. And I think that's the circle of life too, right? Is that there's so many things we don't recognize while we are moving into and through adulthood, that later on we go, oh, it's kind of like that Shel Silverstein poem. You don't recognize it until you're starting to live it.
Exactly. Yeah. On the flip side of that, how can we build emotional wealth? How can we take it from just, okay, I don't want to add emotional debt to now I'm going to build up my emotional bank a little more?
So once you recognize where you are, I'm half full, I'm quarter full, I'm overflowing, you stop and think about what does give you happiness. What does give you happiness? Now, if you can't think of anything, here's some suggestions. Walking outside is a great way to build emotional wealth. Better yet, walking barefoot outside is a fabulous way. There's a whole scientific body of study called grounding or earthing, where when you're walking barefoot in the sand, in the dirt, in the grass, there's actually, they've seen there's electrical charges that are coming up that are actually feeding you through your feet. So walking barefoot is fabulous. It's a great thing to do. We live close enough to the beach that we go and walk barefoot in the shore many days.
That's awesome.
Taking time to do nothing. This is something I struggle with, Mama Fox.
Same.
I have really had to learn how to do nothing. My husband, however, is very good at it, and is giving me lessons on how to do nothing. I always feel like I've got to be learning or teaching or doing something. There's something to be done, and I am learning lately, to do nothing. Finding a hobby that feeds you. At one point in my life, I realized that I was having a problem with my emotional bank. And I wrote down all the things that I did to keep busy. And then I wrote a plus sign or a minus sign next to everything. And all it was is, if I'm volunteering for this organization, does this make me feel good? Or do I feel like it's causing me to go down? And I went through everything, and everything that was a negative, I would call them up, because I volunteer a lot. And I'd say, you know what? I love the organization. I think it's great. Let me give you the names of 3 other people that might be able to take my place. I'm going to have to remove myself from there right now.
Yeah.
Identifying what gives you joy, what feeds you emotionally. That's a big part of it. And we don't take time to do that because we're so busy helping others, right? And if we can't take care of others until we've taken care of ourselves.
Yeah. One of my dear friends that I work with, and we used to be in the same office, in the same building and everything, she bought me a magnet that said, "Stop me before I volunteer again." And it was true. I mean, I was volunteering for everything. It was just like, this organization needs help, I'll do it. This organization, I'll do it. We need to start this, I'll do it. We need to be involved in this organization, I'll do it. So it was.
And we don't have to.
No, and I definitely didn't have to. I didn't need to, but it was just one of those things. I think I was looking for something fulfilling, but then the problem was I would not let go of the previous ones because I was like, well, I volunteered for it. So instead of saying like, this did not bring me joy, I need to let it go, I'd be like, this did not bring me joy. However, I said I would do it, so now I have to do it forever, which is not the case. You don't have to do that.
Along those lines, MommaFoxFire, I found that too many of us are what we call a blessings hog. It's a term that I have found. If you've heard the phrase, it's more blessed to give than it is to receive. If we're giving all the time and we're not stopping to receive, the person that's getting all the blessings is us. And if we're getting all the blessings, that means we're taking away blessings from other people. So when we say no to an organization that we've said, okay, we'll be the membership chair for 1 year, and we're now in year 3 or 4, we're being a blessings hog because we're getting all of the blessings.
I like that way of looking at it.
So allowing somebody else to be the membership chair, allowing somebody else to run the fundraiser, allowing somebody else, we are sharing our blessings and allowing others to be blessed as well.
That's a great way to look at it, especially if you're looking at professional organizations and stuff like that. I was looking at things in the architecture engineering space, and it was like I was on all these different things, and like someone else needs a resume, needs that line on a resume, not just me.
Exactly.
Stop being a blessings hog. Listen, I'm not. I think COVID fixed that for me. Because now I'm like, no, I work from home. I'm not driving an hour and a half to get to the office for one meeting. Like, that's not happening.
No, that's good. That's good. And see, making those decisions like that is part of what's building your emotional wealth, is part of what's allowing you to have so much that you can be overflowing. And once you're overflowing, that's when you can help people.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. That's a great reframe for me, honestly. That's good. I want to also bring up your book because your book is called Shower Blessings: Finding Meditation Time in a Busy Life. And that is something like, I would talk about not having time. Meditation is one of those things that I have struggled with. So what drove you to write that book, and what was the experience of writing that book like for you?
A friend of mine and I were having lunch, and I was talking about meditation and everything. And she said, "You know what? I would love to meditate. I just don't have time." And I looked at her and I said, "But you shower alone, don't you?" And she said, "Well, yeah." And I realized that, especially when I was a young mom, a mom of young kids, going to the bathroom was the treat of the day, right? Because you could close the door. And I realized that in the shower was the phrase, cleanliness is close to godliness. And so I used that and said, really, when you're in the shower, that's a great time to meditate, to pray, to just be focused on yourself, to be focused on your own emotional wealth, if you will. And so I wrote the book for my friend, and
I like that.
And then I started writing it, and I thought, and it's funny because years ago I was told I must write, and I was like, write what? So I've got 4 or 5 books like in the hopper, but Shower Blessings was pretty easy to write. And I wrote it and I read it and I was like, oh, this is awful. But again, I was working at the college and I knew that there were tutors that help people with writing. So I went to the tutoring lab and I said, how much do you guys charge to edit a book? Very reasonable. They shaped it up and made it something that's actually enjoyable to read. I intentionally made it small and very quick reading, because if you don't have time to meditate, you don't have time to read a big book.
Yes, that's
so
true.
It's very small, very digestible, and I'm happy that others have been able to see it and enjoy it.
Yep, absolutely. Well, if anyone is interested in that book, I did just put a link to buy it on Amazon. You can buy it there. So make sure to go check that out for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, meditation is one of those things, like if I want to do nothing, like you were talking about, if I want to do nothing, then I might color or something like that. Like that's my doing nothing. And that's one of those things that just in doing this podcast and doing this live show, I've come to realize like that is a form of meditation.
It is. It absolutely is.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. Yeah. It's quiet time where you can kind of think on your own thoughts and listen. So one of the things I say in the book is that there's a couple of things I like. There's apparently a Zen quote that says, if you don't have time to meditate for a half an hour a day, then you need to sit and meditate for an hour a day.
Ouch.
Another one I really like is I tell people, and I use the words interchangeably, pray or meditate, but you should do it a lot, A-L-O-T. The A is when you meditate, ask and be very, very specific, because I have found that if I'm not specific, what I've been given, I have to reflect afterwards and go, oh, yes, that's what I asked for, but it wasn't in the right way I thought about. But be very specific. And why should you ask? MommaFoxFire, I knew that my kids wanted food, water, shelter, things. There's no way I would have known that they wanted a pony unless they asked. So that's why it's important to ask and be very, very specific. The second thing in a lot is L is to listen. Because just because we ask, we need to listen. And that means watching, seeing what's going on, because that present may arrive in a different kind of box. And so being able to listen. The O for me is very, very difficult. And I share a story about having to give away $1,000, which I did not have, about the O for obey. And when you listen, whatever you hear, whatever you see, whatever message you get, you must obey. And then the T is regardless of what happens, whether you perceive it good or bad or indifferent, you always, always, always give thanks.
I like that. And I feel like probably many times, we think about something for a long time or meditate on it or pray on it or whatever it is. And then we just kind of ignore when it happens because it's not exactly how we thought it was going to. And it's like going back to kind of being grateful and the T in that, right? The thankful part. If you're sitting there and you're really trying to come up with things that you're thankful for every day, every month, however often you do it, eventually you're going to realize, oh, that is something that I am thankful for. It did happen. I just either didn't realize it or it didn't happen exactly how I thought it was going to, but it did kind of resolve. So I like that a lot.
You're so right.
A lot.
I know when I get that driver in front of me that's driving 5 miles below the speed limit and I can't pass them. Oh, but I grab the steering wheel and say, I'm so thankful for this person who's driving in front of me, because the reason why they're driving so slowly is it may be preventing me from being in an accident, or it may cause me to slow down and look at something. There may be something I need to see. So everything that happens all day long, I give thanks.
That's wonderful. Do you have a mental health care provider that you see regularly or periodically?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I have lots of tapping friends. So, and I'm in a number of different tapping circles. So, in fact, I have an appointment tomorrow with a tapping friend. And I also have a lot of physical support in terms of, a network chiropractor, a acupuncturist, a massage therapist. So and I don't look at these as luxuries, MommaFoxFire. I look at these as this is what's keeping me healthy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've hired different people over the years. In January, I hired a nutritional consultant. Now, I know a lot about nutrition, and I'm very careful about my diet. And she was able to put me on such a great place. It was fabulous. And I've hired different consultants at different times that help me. If I have a particular issue, I was so disappointed to find out, MommaFoxFire, that I don't know everything.
Me either.
And so I'm blessed to have these wonderful people in my life who do know this or that or the other thing, and I can hire them and work with them.
Yeah. I think that that's great because I go to the chiropractor not as much as I used to. I used to go quite frequently, like once a month or so, just for like a regular adjustment. Since moving, I haven't really found anyone that I super like down here, but every now and then something will happen. Again, like I said, usually to my back. And it's amazing just going in and getting some immediate relief, but then relief over several days from a chiropractor who just knows what they're doing and helps reset your body so that you don't have to worry about it so much. But yeah, like a massage therapist, that should be, if you can afford it, a necessity. Absolutely.
I count it as part of my health routine. So, I mean, I have friends, God bless them, that, have been through some horrible, horrible health issues. And some of them have had to file bankruptcy because of the medications and the treatments and horrible things. And so I don't look at those expenses as anything except they're health related. Now, my taxes don't let me, but personally, I see them as that's what I do for my health.
Absolutely.
My exercise, my nutrition, taking care of my body.
Yeah, for sure. If you had chosen a different life path or if you'd done something different in your career, what would you be doing instead?
I find that I really enjoy marketing. I have a lot of fun with marketing, which is, if you think about math, it's like the other.
Yeah, it is.
But I do love to market. I love coming up with names. Excuse me. Waffles was one example.
Yep.
Excuse me, I got a frog in my throat. The name of my company. I took my last name, which is my husband's last name. Excuse me, just a minute.
Yeah, take a drink. Take a drink of water. Absolutely.
But my husband's last name is Nall,
Mm-hmm.
Nall. So my company's name is, I took that name and added the word edge.
Yep, I love that so much.
Everything knowledge company.
Yes, yes.
I love doing that. And I have, because I'm a professional speaker with National Speakers Association, I end up mentoring other speakers and helping them like come up with different phrases or different topics or different kinds of things. For instance, I'm also a DISC presenter, which is about personalities and about how helpful it is for you to cough in a podcast.
Take another drink of water if you need to. Don't.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
It's fine. It's all good. Listen, sometimes I swallow wrong and then it takes me 20 minutes to recover. So it's all good. Okay. We've all been there.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. But I've been giving the DISC talk for about 20 years. And truthfully, I got bored with it. And so I was like, well, I need to jazz it up some way. I can't think of a way. But what I came up with is 4 people walk into a room. And so I'm describing the same information, but I'm giving the personalities names of people and how they dress and what time they come in and what they do. And it's like, to me, it just brought the whole thing to life in a different way.
Yeah. That's awesome. I like that. Well, it is time for our magic moment. And you may have seen me reaching for this magic wand, but I have to get it going on the right setting here. So I have this magic wand. If you could wave this magic wand and eliminate one common opinion, misconception, or theory surrounding mental illness, disabilities, or talking about mental health, what would it be?
That's such a great question. I have worked with different people on tapping who are scared of it because they think it may negatively affect their religious belief. And so the magic wand that I would wish for MommaFoxFire is for a general acceptance of tapping and how to do it and understanding that maybe we can't explain exactly why it works or how it works. Nobody can explain why CBT works, and we accept it. So my magic wand would be for greater acceptance of tapping.
Interesting that people consider like it to be conflicting with religion. I mean, I would think that could be absolutely tied in with this is an act of faith kind of thing. Like I would think you could tie that straight to any religion that you wanted to in some way, shape, or form. But I feel like the beauty of it is that no matter what religion, it's something that could work, you know? Yeah, that would be great.
I've been into that multiple times.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. Well, that's something to hopefully change in the near future. Well, folks, we have kind of reached the end of our interview here. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask Katie, make sure that you put them into the chat, !Q, follow with your question, pop them in there. And I'm going to put your socials one more time, your website, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, etc. in here one more time for folks who might want to connect with you. And I will just open it up to you and say, is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to talk about, resources, anything like that? And you've got the floor.
One thing that I like to offer is my phone number.
Okay.
That a lot of people, I'd love to talk to people. For some reason, people are hesitant to email, but I would challenge your listeners to call me.
Absolutely.
And I'll tell it on the air. My number is area code 772-226-0167. I'd love to talk to you and find out what you're going through right now.
I love that. 772-226?
226-0167.
Okay. Got it. I popped that into the chat as well. So if anybody's interested in calling, wait a few minutes because we're going to disconnect here, but wait a few minutes. But this has been a lovely conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today. Bimer says, I just want to say thanks for being here. I had fun and learned a lot. Got some new tools for the toolbox and new books to read. Yes, we're always interested in new books. Absolutely. So, but thank you. This was a beautiful conversation. I appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate what you're doing in the world.
I hope you found my conversation with Dr. Katie Nall as enlightening and empowering as I did. Remember, your emotional well-being is a treasure worth investing in. If you'd like to connect with Dr. Nall or explore more of her insights, you can visit her website or follow her on social media. The link to her guest page with ways to connect is right down there in the episode description. And hey, if this episode sparked some thoughts or questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me too. I love hearing from you. You can drop me a message on social media. I'm MommaFoxFire everywhere, or email me at mommafoxfire@gmail.com, and I promise I'll get back to you. If you found this episode helpful, please consider leaving a review or rating on your favorite podcast platform. Any engagement really helps me reach more people who could benefit from conversations like this one. Remember, it's the small steps we take today that lead to big changes tomorrow. So let's keep nurturing our mental health one episode at a time. Thank you for being part of our community. Until next time, take good care of yourself. And remember, even tacos fall apart sometimes, but we still love them, and I still love you.